So let's start with early intervention. Early intervention is a part of a federal special education law, and early intervention is provided in all states in the union, every county in every state, and every town in every county. So no matter where you live, early intervention is available to you or families that you serve. Early intervention is infants and toddlers who have delays and disabilities. Birth to 36 months. Our whole gig is hit them hard, hit them early, and change the trajectory in life. That's what early intervention is all about. Our philosophy is to work with the big people, to work with the little people. So years ago, we used to be Mary Poppins, drop in, Christa would bring her magic toy bag and sprinkle pixie dust on the child, play with the child on the floor, while the mother texted or went out for a smoke or caught up on email, and then Christa would drive back to the office and say, that was good, we had a really good time. We realized the evidence-based practices are that intervention actually takes place in between the visits of the professionals when it comes to infants and toddlers. Because infants and toddlers are absolutely, totally dependent on a caregiver. Now, if you and I have therapy or need something, we can generalize it. Somebody can say to you, okay, you got this bad leg, I'm a physical therapist, you need to do the, you can do that, and I want you to do it 3 times a day. An 18-month-old can't do that. They are totally dependent on the big person to help them in daily routines throughout the day. So where we used to look at, Christa could be in a home maybe once a week for 40 minutes. That was called intervention. Now, as of the last few years, intervention takes place probably on an average 4, 5, 6 times a day in daily routines by the primary caregiver every single day. Do you see where that trajectory changes then? When we work on talking to the big people. And the change for Christa and her colleagues and everybody in early intervention, they went into this field because they love little children. Now they're working with big kids, big people. And that's a whole different story. For all you who work with children and adults, you'd say, like I used to be a school principal, I said, I'd love to work be a principal in an orphanage. No parents, just kids. You know, I mean, some of you are smiling, so you kind of know the deal here. But you know what? Kids are a 2-for-1 package. They come with the adult. And our whole thing now is working with the adult to change the trajectory. Try to prevent special education. Try to change the trajectory of life for that child. And let me tell you a statistic. 2/3 of the children that we work with who have delays and disabilities do not go into special education preschool. That's incredible. And we do this for a nickel. And, well, I'll get into that a little bit later about what we do. So let's jump into some milestones, typical and atypical development for Christa.
Perfect, thanks David. So what I'm going to be talking about is the actual child development. And if anybody has gone through and has like a degree in early childhood education or any of those pieces, you realize that in half an hour we're not able to touch base on every single piece of child development. So what I am going to do is we're going to be talking about a few certain ages up through age 5, but also giving you resources. So if you want to know what does child development look like for a 2-month-old, what does it look like for a 9-month-old, what should an 18-month-old be doing, what should a 3-year-old be doing, what should a 3.5-year-old be doing, we'll have resources for you to find those specific pieces because there's a lot that goes into child development. And so if we think about the different areas that kids can grow in, there are their cognitive skills, which really look at their problem solving, figuring things out, their thinking. How do they know that they can get on a chair to get something on the counter? How do they know that they can ask for something that they want to eat or ask somebody to play with them? We look at their motor skills, so how are they able to move around? It goes from babies who are just picking up their head, to sitting, to pulling to stand, to walking, to running, to going up and down the slides, to be able to go on the monkey bars. So you can see even in that 5-year time period, there's a big swing there. Socially, how are kids engaging with us? So what do they do around other kids their age? What do they do around older children? What do they do around adults and their siblings? How do they let us know that they want to play with us or that they're interested in something? When we look at their self-help or adaptive skills, these are pieces that we look at as far as eating, dressing, really all of their independence. So we know as a baby they're not as independent, but eventually kids start to be able to hold on to their bottle and then feed themselves small pieces of food, and then parents are feeding them food, and then they learn to eat off of a spoon. They can drink from a bottle and then from a cup and then from an open cup. So that looks at that area, and then communication. So it looks at not only what are they saying, so babies start just by making little grunts and coos, to doing the babbling, ba 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 da da da, to starting to say single words, 2-word sentences, starting then to be able to ask questions, answer questions, looking at what is their understanding. So if I ask a child to go put your shoes away and grab your coat, that they can follow those sorts of directions. So we think about overall child development. There are 12 different principles of development and learning, knowing that all areas of development are important. It follows a sequence. So just like a baby's not going to start by running, they start by pushing up on their tummy to being able to roll, to crawl, pull to stand. So there's always a developmental sequence that kids go through. And one of your biggest signs for atypical development is kids are missing milestones. So they may be able to talk, may be able to answer questions or talk in multiple word sentences, but are unable to if you ask them something, they have no idea what you're talking about or can't follow a direction. So when you start to see, well, they can do this, which is a higher level skill, but they can't do this, then that is starting to cue us into, well, this is not the normal progression. Know that it proceeds at very different rates. So there is a normal typical age range. So like walking age range is 8 to 14, 16 months, which is a pretty wide range for kids. So there is a typical range that kids can be, and we want them to be somewhere in that range. Development always comes from their interaction with different experiences and people, and as they grow up. And a lot of it has what has a profound effect is the relationships that they have with people. So kids are going to be developing and learning, but it's very relationship based, because all the people who are with the children are the ones who get to provide the experiences and opportunities for kids to learn, how do I interact with this kind of opportunity? Is this something that I should be afraid of? Is it something new and exciting? I mean, they're looking to adults for all of those opportunities. Play is a very important piece of development that I think that we often forget. Play and looking at kids doing things with us. So if you have a child at home, it's having them help putting the laundry away, or cooking, or doing different kinds of things around the house that they see you do all the time. Those are great learning opportunities, but it's just involving kids in that piece. So if we look at what we're going to do is I have a couple videos, and we're going to look at a couple different ages of children. This is actually a 18-month-old, but on this, off of this YouTube site, it's out of Minnesota. It's a similar program that does early intervention. They have some different ages, so then you can go and look at different ages, but you can see, or what we'll see is we're going to see, or maybe it is a 12-month-old.
Minnesota Help Me Grow. When parents know, children grow. Age, 12 months. Happy first birthday, baby. A year has gone by and baby has changed and learned so much. Her thinking and learning skills are growing every day. Cognitive development.
Oh, that was a big kiss.
At 12 months, your baby can copy sounds and actions you make. Your baby is learning by copying you. Your baby shows her thinking skills when she accomplishes simple goals, like seeing a toy and deciding to crawl over and get it, or dropping a toy into a container and then retrieving it. Memory is growing too. She will look for an object she watched fall out of sight and try to find it. Babies enjoy throwing objects just for fun, with no particular purpose. While this can be annoying to parents, it is a stage all babies go through. A 1-year-old baby will show interest in her favorite story by listening and pointing when a familiar item is named. Social and emotional development. Your baby is becoming more and more aware of the emotions of others. She smiles when she sees a smiling face or cries if someone seems sad or upset. 1-year-olds show affection to familiar adults. At 1, your baby is likely to be distressed or anxious when you leave them. Many babies show apprehension about strangers. While they are interested in watching other children, they will not be able to cooperate in their play. Large and small muscle development. Large muscles or gross motor skills refer to movements of the large muscles in the body that have helped your baby learn to roll, sit, and crawl. By 1, a baby can sit well without support and will crawl on hands and knees. He may be pulling himself to stand or take steps holding onto furniture, and can walk with one hand held. Some babies are taking their first steps or even walking by 12 months of age. There is a great difference when babies accomplish these milestones. You will need to look at your home again very carefully and be sure there are no dangers. Your baby's increasing abilities to use his hands and fingers are called fine motor development. Fine motor skills are used when a baby picks up smaller objects using her index finger and thumb to grip an object. She will be able to hold 2 objects in one hand. With improved small motor skills, babies can use a finger to point or poke. Place small blocks in and take them out of a container. Knock 2 wood blocks together and feed themselves finger food. Language and communication development.
Yeah?
At 1 year of age, a baby will be making many sounds and repeating sounds he hears and babble away as if he was having a conversation. This is the age when first words are heard.
Maybe Samson.
When asked, a 1-year-old may be able to point to a body part or a picture in a book.
Be nursed, yeah. This is what he usually does.
Your 1-year-old tries to talk by getting your attention and then using sounds to talk. Pointing will be one of your baby's new ways to get her message across. Pointing is a powerful and effective form of communication. By 1, a baby raises her arms when she wants to be picked up. She understands simple requests. There are a lot of things you can do to help your baby grow and learn. An important way is to give your baby plenty of love and attention. Some ways you can support your child's development are to build your child's vocabulary. If he points to or says car, you can say, "The car is driving down the street." Name the people, places, and things that your child sees every day. That's a bunny hopping away. Give your baby a variety of containers and safe toys to play with. Give your baby a safe place to move around. Spend time every day hugging and cuddling. Sometimes babies aren't developing as typically expected. These signs indicate that your baby may not be developing as other 12-month-old children when she is not interested in playing, doesn't react to loud noises or turn toward you when you speak, doesn't make a range of sounds, is not pointing as a way to show you what he's interested in, is not moving about by crawling or scooting, is not trying to stand up, or can't walk when her hand is held.
So when you're talking with families, if you're wanting a resource as far as how do I talk with families about what kids should be doing, on your resource list, the very first one is the CDC milestones, and what there are checklists from 2 months all the way up to 5 years old. And so this is what the 1-year-old one looks like. It's English on one side and Spanish on the other, but it'll give you, and these aren't in your resource, they're just on the very top of your resource list, so if you want them, you can go and print some off. But it'll say, what do most kids at this age do? So it'll show for social emotional skills, language communication, cognitive movement, physical development. then it gives you all different items of things that you can look at and talk about with families. And it even says, because it's all about learning the signs, acting early, so you can talk to your doctor if your child is not doing these things. So if your child doesn't crawl, can't stand when supported, those pieces, they'll show you exactly where to talk to. It talks about looking at early intervention for your state. But this is a great resource to have for families. Anybody can use these checklists, so parents can do them, other people who are providers can use this checklist as a way to talk about what we should be expecting. Well, they're not doing this, then that gives us an opening to talk about their development. So there are, like I said, it goes from 2 months all the way up to 5 years, and it's on the CDC website, which has a plethora of resources. There's trainings, just a variety of all sorts of pieces that can be beneficial for families and providers. So the next one we're going to look at is a 3-year-old. So first we looked at a 1-year-old, and now we're going to see what do these 3-year-olds do.
Minnesota Help Me Grow. When parents know, children grow. Age 3 years. Your child at age 3 may seem very grown up. Her attention span is longer. She is no longer saying no as often, and she has become interested in many things.
To Elizabeth.
Cognitive development.
Now what is Dr. Diane doing? He is, and he's going.
By 3, children recognize and identify almost all common objects in pictures. 3-year-olds have come to understand differences such as big and little. She can sort by shapes such as circles, squares, and triangles, and can understand the concept of the number 2. While she may not know the names of colors, she can match items of the same color. A 3-year-old uses her thinking skills to solve problems. A 3-year-old's play often involves imitating adult tasks such as cleaning or cooking. Your child may use her imagination, pretending that it is bedtime for Teddy and putting a blanket to cover him up. Language and communication development. The 3-year-old is a great conversationalist and will chat away. She speaks in complete sentences of 3 to 5 words and can use pronouns such as me, you, we, us, them, and some plurals like cars, dogs, or cats. She is able to say her name, age, and sex. Others will be able to understand most of what she says. She is able to respond to questions when asked and can answer questions that require more than a yes or no answer, like, "Where do you think Bunny went to?" Your child is probably asking a lot of why questions. Sometimes it seems endless, but patience in your responses helps 3-year-olds learn. By 3, a child uses language to express both thoughts and feelings. She can understand sentences with 2 or more ideas. You can have a cookie when we get home. Talking with your child about everything helps her grow and learn. Social and emotional development. By 3, a child is better able to contain their emotions, and there will be less tantrums and outbursts. When a 3-year-old sees another child crying, they may try to comfort the child. At 3, children express affection openly and express a wide range of emotions. By 3, a child will separate easily from his parents. At this age, she is interested in playing with other children, and friends become increasingly important. Large and small muscle development. By 3, a child's balance is fairly good overall. Around 3, children learn to jump, usually from a bottom step of stairs, and may do this over and over again. 3-year-olds can climb ladders, use a slide independently, and alternate their feet when climbing stairs. He walks with an almost adult style and runs around obstacles easily. He can catch large balls and throw balls overhand. Instead of simply scribbling with markers or crayons, the 3-year-old makes simple drawings. She is able to copy drawings such as a circle or a cross. Because eye-hand coordination is so much more developed at 3, a child may enjoy threading large beads onto a thick string, or may want to build a tall tower of blocks. There are several things you can do to help your 3-year-old grow and learn. Some ways you can support your child's development are to point out colors and numbers in the course of everyday conversation. Provide lots of sensory experiences for learning and developing coordination, sand, finger paint, puzzles, markers, and crayons. Give your child opportunities to move about and use the large muscles, time at the playground, park, or backyard. Sometimes children aren't developing as typically expected. These signs indicate that your child may not be developing as other 3-year-old children when she frequently falls and has difficulty going up or down the stairs, has persistent drooling or very unclear speech, is unable to build a tower of more than 4 blocks, is unable to communicate in short phrases, doesn't engage in pretend play, is unable to understand simple instructions, has little interest in other children, has extreme difficulty separating from parents.
So you can see how much a child has matured from 12 months old to being a 3-year-old. And one of the things I actually wanted to mention on the CDC's website is that for each of these items, there's actually a video or picture for every single item. So like on the 1-year one under social, the first one is shy or nervous with strangers. So there'll either be a picture or a video for every single item. So then you can have families go and look and see what does it look like. Or you can go there yourself and see what it looks like, because sometimes it may not be, you just want to make sure you're getting the same idea across to the parents. So even like on the 5-year-old, for one of the language ones, tells a simple story using full sentences. So then there will either, I'm guessing for that one will be a video, but it can show you then what would it look like. There's also, you can look at the link for the 5-year-old. On this YouTube site is for the Help Me Grow Minnesota. They have a variety of other videos. They have 1 to 18 months, 3, 4, 5, and younger. So then that can give a good idea of just kind of different segments of what to kind of expect in these little 5. They're usually about 5 to 7 minutes for each of these videos. But the last thing I wanted to talk about was, we're only going to talk about one specific disability, and this really is because it's very prevalent. So at a young age, usually from birth to 5 is where we start to see red flags for children who may have an autism spectrum disorder. And so these are just pieces that you can keep in the back of your mind as far as what is a child doing or maybe not doing, like not responding to their name, not pointing to things, not doing any pretend play by 18 months, so feeding a baby doll, avoiding eye contact or having intermittent eye contact, wanting to spend a lot of time alone, repeating phrases over and over and over again, especially from, usually kids get this from like a TV show, and so they'll say the same thing over and over and over, lining up toys or objects, so playing with things in a way that's different than how they're intended to be played with. So some things can be intended to be played with by lining up, but then are they also able to let you change up the play and be fine with it? If they have any interest that is where they'll just kind of perseverate. So oftentimes we see a lot of things like with spinning, so spinning wheels, laying on the floor looking at things. I've had kids with really line stuff, so they'll trace everything. You may see some different sorts of behaviors like hand flapping, turning around, maybe certain hand positioning, standing on toes, doing things that are different than other children their age. They may have a pretty flat affect. So when you think that you're going to be surprised, you still get the look that it looks like they didn't even react. Or you may notice where they have different emotions for the event. So somebody gets hurt and they laugh, or they cry when it's supposed to be a happy time. So then their emotions are different than what you kind of expect. You may see some hyperactivity, impulsivity, really seeking out experiences like jumping, running, sliding, liking to be swung, or it could even be the opposite where they don't want to deal with any sorts of textures. So you have feeding concerns. So there are many red flags, and not all children who are diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder have all of these, but it does, when you start to compile some, then you can start to know, so maybe this is part of their picture, so that then you can talk with the families. But if you're wanting more resources for that, Autism Speaks, which is on your resource list, is a great place to look at. They have checklists that you can do for kids 18 to 30 months as far as showing different sorts of concerns. In the CDC, this information is from the CDC, so they also have information as well on there.
So the next thing we were asked to talk to you about was having difficult conversations. And difficult conversations, you could talk about it. I want to be a little more global first, kind of the whole part. If you look at difficult conversations, all of us have had experiences with difficult conversations. We've either been on the communicating end and it didn't go very well, or we've been on the receiving end and we say, cold day in hell that I'm going to listen to this again, or whatever it is. Those experiences that we have had with difficult conversations tend to flavor all of our behaviors when we are facing crucial conversations, which by the way, there's a book called Crucial Conversations that is awesome. It's really good about speaking up. But we have to own first, as professionals, the fact that we have personal experiences. We have experiences in our life that go back many, many years as to why it's hard for us to have difficult conversations. And we have to own it. We just have to own that we have emotions, we've had experiences, and typically when we're ready to have a difficult conversation, we play back in our head that video of the most difficult, the one that went south, the one that was the worst one, and we put that into this potential conversation we're going to have, and then we say, not going to do it. I'm here to tell you today, as professionals, you owe it to the child to have a difficult conversation if you suspect that there is a delay or a disability. Now, I have worked with mama bears for a lot of years in my life, and I have some scars on my backside to know that having difficult conversations about delays or disabilities are sometimes really challenging. But I remember one, and Marcia and Deb, you probably remember this, an autism conference at MSUB maybe 8 years ago, when there was a parent panel of maybe 5, 6, 8 parents who had children with disability, with autism, and there was maybe, I don't know, there was hundreds of us out in the audience, and they were all saying, primarily we were educators, you owe it to our child, if you suspect a delay or a disability, as early as possible to talk to us. Well, I had just had a conference with a mama bear who just ate me alive. And I was like the revenant guy, you know, that's how I felt. I was just barely survived and I pulled out of here. And now I hear these parents say it. So I stood up and I said, I have to tell you, it is very difficult to have a difficult conversation when the claws come out and it's how dare you, and there's the stages that go through, and there's emotions that come up about how dare you do. And every single person on that panel said, you owe it to my child. You owe it to my child. None of them said, I'm sorry about that. But they all said later, the trajectory changed as soon as we knew what we were dealing with and we could get onto it. And sometimes if we wait for years or we wait for a long period of time, somebody else will do it, we avoid having the difficult conversation, it is the child who suffers. And here is why we do it. This is why you speak up. When you look in the eyes here, it's all about the child. You owe it to the child to speak up. And to change the trajectory is about the child. And let me just give you a little figure. About 120 years ago, I was a special ed director in Billings. So for every child, special education costs were $7,900 per year, from age 3 to now it's 19. You add that up, that's $118,000. My budget was $13 million for 1,700 children with disabilities. You remember what I just told you a little bit ago about 2/3 of the kids that we work with do not go into special education preschool? They're not tracked in. I'm not saying that they won't at some day, but anything that we can pray, even if you don't care about kids, even if you don't care about families, and you're just a bean counter and all you care about is budget, doesn't it make sense? It makes sense to intervene early and have difficult conversations as soon as you potentially recognize that there's a difficulty or a potential challenge or disability. Now, we're going to look at a brief video here, 5 minutes of a video that's on the CDC website that is actually a training about having difficult conversations with families. And it's kind of set up like this, where there are preschool teachers and educators who are being taught about having difficult conversations. I'm going to show you a little clip, but if you're interested in this, it's a 15-minute video that is powerful. It's really powerful. Don't worry about the autism part of it. It's not just about autism. It's any delay or disability that you see, you owe it to, and I don't care, you live next door to a family who has a little 3-year-old who's not developed and not speaking right. You owe it to that child to have a conversation, or a grandchild, or somebody at your church, or somebody that you work with. You owe it to the child to have this conversation. So we'll watch about 5 minutes of this video.
Noticing early warning signs, specifically if a child is not meeting typical developmental milestones. That's your indication you need to have a conversation with parents. You're familiar with the child, having closely observed his or her behavior. Use that as a focal point when you talk with parents.
We document everything that happens in the class that is out of the ordinary, and we discuss it with the parents on a daily or weekly basis. We do ask the parents to come in, and we did ask Mrs. Campbell to come in and observe and see the reaction that Aiden had to the other children.
To watch him go through that was very frustrating and heartbreaking.
What happened? Are you okay?
Because I didn't understand what was going on.
I asked her if she had talked to her physician and if he had noticed anything out of the ordinary. And then at that point is when I suggested that she have the screening.
I was very upset and hurt at what she was saying. I didn't know what could possibly be going on. I was terrified.
Before you raise the issue, think through the discussion in advance. Give thought to both how you will approach the parent and what words and tone you will use.
What kinds of things have you found worked when you were talking to a parent about the possibility of a developmental delay in their child?
Remain very objective. This is what I observe, and pass no judgments, and also do a lot of listening.
Give them the positive information, and you also, I think you should show them the things that the child can do.
I understand you may not see some of these behaviors at home because this is a different setting, but this is what I see at school, and my concern is the way that it's going to impact his learning. And, and keep it real, like a partnership.
We're here to talk about Israel today, and he's been doing really, really well lately.
I've always had these kind of conversations with the teams. I always start with the positives of what the child is doing.
He has been doing really well. We just started working more closely on actually writing the letters.
So not just telling them what is going on, but showing them examples or specific scenarios.
Before you actually sit down with a parent to talk with them, role play with your supervisor. Talk to your supervisor about how you would broach the subject with the parent, keeping in mind that this may be the very first time a parent has ever heard that there's an issue.
He likes the circle time. He likes to do the poems and the plays, but I have a concern regarding his speech.
It's like a ongoing, repetitive action that he does. Have you seen any of this at home?
By 4 years old, he really should be playing with other children a little bit more.
So you think there's a problem? I'm kind of scared.
The reason I'm bringing this up is because it's something that we can do something about.
Okay. I would suggest maybe going back to the pediatrician and having him do a developmental screening on Connor. It's just where he's going to look to see if Connor is reaching those milestones.
This is a key. You're really trying to get early intervention to a child that needs help. And why is that? Because they're going to make more progress.
At the end of last year, we had a meeting with Mrs. Gingrich in regards to Aiden's development.
There you go.
I think communication is the #1 skill to have as a teacher.
And most children his age could stop, and if I could say, we'll finish it later, they're fine with it. But for him, he could just have a meltdown.
Lots of phone calls, emails, so that when you do have a concern, they actually will listen because that trust is there. What we do is we build a tower of information, and once we get to the top of that tower, usually the parents will be the ones to look at you and say, what should I do?
She's recommended that we would see a developmental pediatrician and gave us some information in regards to getting that ball rolling.
We have a list of doctors that we could hand to them, and then the parent has to take it on their own initiative and do what they feel is best for their child.
I really appreciate you letting me know those things.
I know you do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Remember, you are not being asked to make a diagnosis. Your role is to encourage parents to talk to their child's doctor to get their child screened. Your state's early intervention program or local school district may also have additional screening resources. Parents don't need a doctor's referral to get these services.
Let me just give you a little piece of research from 0 to 3, reputable in our field research organization. 80% of families noted that professionals powerfully or moderately influenced their decisions regarding their child. This is how families look at you as professionals. 80% of them say, you have a powerful influence on what I do with my child. That's a big responsibility. And so when it comes to difficult conversations, you owe it to the child, being a professional. Whether you work with the child or just know the child, you owe it. In this world, making it better for children. That's our calling as professionals. We have that obligation. So, the last part that I want to talk to you about is how to get a conversation started. And I want to give you 5 steps on starting a difficult conversation with a family. First, this is probably something you're not going to talk to the family about. You might, depending on your relationship. That is, acknowledge your own emotions. Just come clean that you have your own emotions, reactions, you have your own experiences. Just confess to yourself. Just acknowledge and be okay with that. I don't like confrontation. I don't like when people blow up. I feel guilty when this happens. I second guess myself. That's got to be the first step. You've got to come clean and acknowledge your own emotions. You can read that book, Crucial Conversations, if you want. You can think about times when things went well for you, and most likely it went well when there was a relationship and when somebody listened to you. It wasn't a one-way thing. It was a conversation. So think about the times it went well for you, and then that's how you go into it. Number 2, prepare. Be intentional about this. Practice. Have these key points. It's just not this fly-by passing that you just happen to catch a parent in the parking lot and say, oh, by the way, or whatever. And it's not just kind of this talking down to a parent. It's very intentional, and you can start with words like, I noticed that, or like what Christa showed you, these developmental milestones that you actually have a printout. And when you sit with a parent side by side, you're not looking at them like this, like, how dare you say this about my child? We're actually looking together at something that is of developmental milestones, and we're looking at it, and then the conversation part is, what do you notice? Well, in the neighborhood and with other children, what do you notice? Have you seen these same things? I wonder what does grandma say about this? So that conversation needs to be kind of intentional and planned and prepared. Number 3, make it a conversation. This is very intentional that this word conversation is used, because conversation is dialogue back and forth. It's not one way. You're not the person that's going to just come and load it with both barrels and kaboom and kaboom and finish them off. And that's how it's going to, it's a conversation. And conversations are always based on trust. You will listen to somebody when there is trust and credibility. So ideally, that trust and credibility has been based. You just use your best human relation skills when you have a conversation. Number 4, offer ideas and options. And this is where you may feel that you don't have a lot to offer. You don't need to. All you really need to do is say, I wonder about a screening. I wonder about an assessment. I wonder how it would be if you brought this up with your pediatrician. You know, I know that there's a couple of agencies in town, if you're in Billings, STEP and ECI, that work with young children. I wonder how, all you have to do is just kind of get it started. You don't have to have answers and solutions, but you have to know where to point somebody. And then you need to be prepared for the emotions. I mean, the emotions can come out. There can be anger, there can be fear, there can be denial, there can be, but you owe it to the child to have that conversation. And then 5th is to follow up with support and encouragement. It's just to be, I mean, that's just part of human relations. You're going to follow up. How are things going? You're not going to be like this woodpecker that's just going to be constantly knocking on him to say, did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it yet? It's about human relations. And it's about just coming back to them and following up with support and with encouragement. Now, there's a couple of handouts that I've got for you. One is sharing concerns if you suspect a developmental delay or autism, speak up. These are some do's and don'ts. Here's what I would say. If you're preparing to have a difficult conversation, pull this thing out of your file and think about these do's and don'ts as you're being intentional to talk with a parent about potential delay or disability. This other one, the tips for talking points, talking with parents, these bullets over on the right-hand side are really well tried and true strategies and ideas to keep in mind as you're planning and preparing for a conversation, a difficult conversation. So that's kind of our package now. You know a little bit about early intervention, you know a little bit about developmental delays, you know a little bit about having difficult conversations. What questions do you have? What have we not answered? Push back. Push back if you see something different than we talked about. I embrace difficult conversations. I really do. What questions do you have? Are you willing to do it? Are you willing to have difficult conversations? If you're reluctant, go back to your own experiences in life. That's probably the core of it. It's not easy, but it's important.
I have a question for you. How do people know if I'm a parent with this child and they're not in school yet? Maybe I'm at home as a stay-at-home mother. How do I know that there's possibly these delays or these and maybe there's not, but again, there's those milestones that we have to really look at. Just because maybe one's not quite where it needs to be doesn't mean that my child has a disability or needs these interventions. How do we find out about you as a mother with a child that's not in school yet?
Well, one of the things is that particularly a parent who has the first child and doesn't have a frame of reference and doesn't know that there's delays, that's part of this whole conversation. And there's 15 people in this room today who I'm hoping have a little bit more motivation to look for and talk to that mother that you had before. You owe it to the child to have that. The mother may or may not go online and find out about, and we do public awareness and outreach and so forth. But it really is up to other people in their life to say, you know what, she should be talking by now. I think something's not right here. And that's generally what it takes, is other people kind of coming in and pointing out.
Yeah, our most common referral source is the pediatrician. So finding a pediatrician who follows development and follows along and does checkups to say, well, okay, at 18 months they weren't doing this. Are they still, come back at 21 months. So there's not a 21-month checkup. But I actually just had a kid on my case, so they said, he's not talking to 18 months. The doctor said, okay, let's give it 3 months to work on some things come back, okay, so they schedule another appointment, he's still not talking, they need a referral for early intervention. So all pediatricians do know about us because we go around and we talk to them almost on a yearly basis, if not more than that. So that is one of the biggest places for families to find that information. But they do need to find a pediatrician who's going to do developmental checklists and follow up on them. So most pediatricians will do them as just part of the packet, but then not everybody follows up. So part of that is also encouraging families to make sure that they have those conversations with their doctor. Okay, well, these are the things I've seen so-and-so, you know, Sally's doing this stuff, but she's not doing this, or is this normal? And going back and forward. But there's also other resources in buildings that do home visiting for kids who don't have developmental delays. Like the Riverstone, the Family Tree Center. So then they also are able to get a lot of developmental information, activities, ideas for families who are wanting more information. And those places also make referrals and do screenings and make referrals for us. So that's kind of the biggest pieces. Doctors and then other community partners.
No questions? Okay. Thank you very much. You all get the children.